Okay, so hello again. I'm Al Valle here with Ida Culver House Ravenna. So before we start today's presentation in Gardening with Ciscoe, I'd like to share a little bit about our beautiful community. Some of you know Ida Culver House Ravenna is a premier retirement community. We're located right here in Seattle's Ravenna. We have comfortable apartments, friendly residents, great food, and we try to have a robust, meaningful life enrichment activities to keep our residents engaged, entertained, and connected. And of course, we got this great outdoor area. Made a big effort to make sure we could show you a little bit about what we have here over Zoom. We try to keep it maintained well, and there's some opportunities for you to get involved with gardening if that's your thing. If you're interested in learning more, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have or to take a tour of our community. My number is 206-523-7315. Of course, my email is al.valle, V-A-L-L-E, @aeroliving.com. Enough about me. Now on our main event, we're honored to have Ciscoe Morris, who's joining us in the garden this afternoon to share some tips for creating a beautiful garden. So a lot of you already know Ciscoe from his previous work, but he's a gardening expert, a TV and radio personality, an author who is well known in the Pacific Northwest. His book, Ask Ciscoe, was a bestseller, and he recently came out with a new book, Ooh La La, last year. When he's not speaking or writing, Ciscoe is often gardening at his home in Northeast Seattle or off hosting garden tours around the world. At this point, Ciscoe, it's all you.
Thanks. And I think what we'll do is after I show a couple of things, we'll start doing your questions, and then I'll do something, then I'll take a question. That way it'll keep it going really good. All right. You even get to see my handsome face. All right. Oh, that's always nice. Okay. Well, hey, it's really a pleasure to be here. I thought I'd start with a little story because that always fires me up. And because everywhere I go, people go, so why do you say oh la la all the time like you do? Well, oh la la came from my travels. So my wife, Mary, and I lead garden tours around the world. I think we've led 20 international garden tours as of this time. And I've scheduled, I hope I get to do it, for one for Scotland coming up. And then I've also got South Africa a little later. So I love leading garden tours. It's so fun. At the end of these tours, or sometimes Mary and I just go over to some other country to do exercise things. For instance, Mary and I have hiked the entire French Alps, just the two of us. Now, it's 360 miles. It's not quite as bad as you think because you're not carrying a big tent and stuff. You stay in huts up in the top of the mountains, and you take a famous trail called the GR5 or the GR5 trail that goes all the way from Lake Lemans down to the Mediterranean, So it can end in Nice or Menton, whichever place you want to end. So now, even though the hiking, you don't carry so much weight because you only need a sleeping sheet. So if any of you decide you ever want to try this, it's a lot of fun. But they feed you and you get to sleep in a hut. So whenever I get to a hut, the first thing I say is, "Je voudrais un vin rouge, s'il vous plaît." That means I'd like some red wine, please, because the hike is really steep and it's painful, So, and just as a little side story, I should tell you that all these huts are different. None are the same. Some huts hold 80 people. Some huts we stayed in only held about 12 people. So you kind of had to call ahead and say, is there a spot for me here, And one hut we stayed in, this is a little side story, actually had a 40-foot mattress right through the middle of the hut. And the madame came out and she goes, "Monsieur, vous êtes ici, madame, vous êtes ici. You have no idea who you're going to be sleeping next to on this mattress." In the middle of the night, I woke up with my arm around Mary. Then I went, "Which side is Mary on?" Luckily, I didn't have my arm around Jacques, but that's another story. So where Oh La La came from, was on a 1,000-mile bike ride Mary and I did in France. We started down in Saint-Tropez in Provence, and we rode all the way up into Bretagne, about 1,000 miles with our tent on our bike. Oh, it was so fun, you can't believe it. And so we had been riding a few days. We were still in Provence, and we saw something that if you've been in France within the last 10 years, you know about these things. But they were brand new then, and we'd never seen them. They're these big plastic bathrooms. They're outdoor bathrooms. So we spotted one, and we knew what it was. So we pulled over to the side, and I sat on the bench. Mary had to put in 2 francs to go in and use it. Pretty soon she comes out, she's holding the door, and she goes, "You're not gonna believe it in there." I go, "What?" She goes, "It's spotlessly clean and it plays great music." I'm like, "Oh boy," So I get up and start fishing around for 2 francs. She goes, "Why waste 2 francs? I have the door open. Just go in and use it." I'm like, "Yeah, why waste 2 francs?" So I go in there and shut the door. There's one little thing that we didn't know about these bathrooms. They're self-cleaning. When the door shuts, it means the person left. It's time to clean. So I walk up to the front. Whoosh, I get blasted right in the chest by this big jet. I run to the back. Whoosh, from behind. I go to the door. It's locked. Whoosh, from the side. Whole time Mary's sitting on this bench watching the toilet going, hearing, ah! Finally, the jet stopped. The door opens. I come staggering out, drenched from head to foot. And here's this little old French guy wearing a beret, holding a baguette, looks at me and goes, "Oh, la la." So now you know why I say "oh la la" all the time. By the way, I was very clean after that experience. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start. I do want to tell you something. I am going to give away a copy at the end, a copy of each of my books. So this one is "Oh La La." This is short stories about gardening. And they're supposed to be really funny. We're going to adjust something or keys. I'm not sure I got it. Okay. So one thing I want you to know, I'm going to give away one book, one of each of my books to some lucky person. This is "Oh La La." Short stories, my brand new one, right off the press. This is short stories about gardening, and they're supposed to be really funny and yet teach you about gardening. I don't know if you'll laugh as hard when you read it as I did when I wrote it, but I hope so. The other one is Ask Ciscoe. It's a Q&A all about gardening. And I co-authored 2 books before I wrote this one. This ended up the #1 selling garden book in the United States. So that was pretty cool. For me, anyway. Okay, and I think you'll like whoever wins them. I have a special way at the end I give those away. Hey, let's do a pot. So a lot of times one reason I like talking about doing a pot is because just about anywhere you live, you can find somewhere where you can do a pot and put it outside and enjoy it. So I'm hoping, even if you have an apartment, if you've got a balcony, if you've just got a spot where you could put it, you could do an amazing pot. It's the most fun kind of gardening because it takes your skill as a gardener to do the plants right and everything. And it takes artistic skill too to get the colors right, everything. Now, I bought this. This is a pretty cheap plastic pot. I love this pot. I paid $25 down at the Sandpoint City Peoples for this. I don't know if they're carrying them this year. Normally, though, I would put these in a beautiful ceramic pot, all my plants. The only reason I'm not doing that is because it would weigh 900 pounds. And as you can see, I'm packing stuff in there because I'm not going to really plant this up. First thing, make sure your pot's got a nice big drain hole. I hope you can see that. I can't tell if you can or not on that, but this has a nice sized drain hole. Now, I'm going to surprise the tweedle out of you by what I say next. That is, if you were like me when you were a kid, I'd go out with my grandma, and if we were going to do a container garden or even a house plant, we'd go find pebbles and put them in the bottom of the pot so that when we put the soil in, the soil wouldn't fall out the hole and it would improve drainage. Well, I went to horticulture school a long time ago. And one of the first things we learned is that is the dumbest thing you can do. Sorry, Grandma, don't get mad about this. But here's the thing. When you put pebbles in there, all the fines in the soil get stuck between the pebbles and it totally messes up the drainage in the pot. We actually did experiments in glass tubes where we could see the effect. So don't put any pebbles in there. Yes, when you water it, some of the soil is going to come out the bottom. You just add more. After you've watered 2 or 3 times, everything will settle out. You'll never have to do that again. Okay, so I got a nice sized pot here. Now, first thing you do, you got to pick a centerpiece. So I try and find something that's going to look cool in this pot. Here we got this blue pot, got this golden Monterey cypress called Wilma Goldcrest. I think the combo is spectacular. The other thing to think about is you want your centerpiece to be in proportion to the size of the pot. If I got a centerpiece that's way up here, when you walk by it, you think it's going to fall over from the wind and it can get way out of proportion. So I always try and make sure that whatever centerpiece I get stays in proportion with the size of the pot. Okay, so that's our thriller. That's whenever someone writes a book about doing containers, you always call this a thriller. By the way, I should tell you, if you watched the TV show with Megan Black and I, this was one of her all-time famous favorite plants. She loves Wilma Goldcrest. You know why? Because she says it smells like lemon pledge. It does, but still, go figure. I don't care. She just really likes lemon pledge. She probably doesn't have any dust in her house at all. Okay, so this is the thriller. Next thing you need fillers. So you want them intermediate size between your thriller and the fillers. You don't want the filler to be too small, right? But you certainly don't want it taller than the middle piece. By the way, I could put this centerpiece in the back if this is going to go against the wall or something. So this is Carrick's, what is it called? It's something like cinnamon twist. I forgot the name. Sorry about that. But there's a lot of these Carrick's. I think the brown color is spectacular. Also, you never want 2 plants that look alike together. So I want something with a different form and texture than the thriller. So this has got this fine grassy texture. It's not an actual grass, it's a sedge. And also it's got a wonderful color that matches with that really nice. And it's a perfect size and the form is totally different than this upright form. So we'll stick that in there. Now, here's another thriller that I love, and I use these all the time. So what this is heuchera or coral bell. And I think they're one of the coolest plants you get. So I'm going to have this nice bold foliage in there that contrasts with both of these plants I've already put in there. And you know what? They have little bell-shaped flowers. That's why we call them coral bells. Guess who loves them? Hummingbirds. I actually sometimes when I have company on our patio at my house, if we have company come, Mary and I usually have a contest who can make the best bouquet. And it's really funny because we take it over to this neighbor's house, but she has to pick which is better. That's the one that gets to sit on the table when company comes. When she sees us coming across with our vases with the bouquets, she runs out the back door. She does not like that job. I don't blame her. So I won the contest. I had all this bold stuff in my bouquet and I needed something fine to contrast. So I cut tons of the flowers off these heucheras, which are fine sprays, put them in my bouquet. Believe it or not, while there were 6 of us sitting around the table, 44-inch table on my patio having dinner, the hummingbirds came to the little coral bell flowers while we were eating dinner. The only problem was I love red and I was wearing a red sweater, and one of those hummingbirds kept trying to stick its beak in my ear, which is very frustrating when you're trying to enjoy a Brussels sprout casserole. Okay, let's cram this guy in. Gets a little hard for me to cram these in this, so I'll do the best I can. All right, we want color. I want, oops, I don't want that color. I want this color. I want color in here. And it's hard to beat. Now, this is a sun pot I'm making right here. But these Martha Washington type geraniums, I love the smell. They repel flies. People like in Idaho that live on farms plant these in window boxes and by their doors. It helps keep the flies from coming in the house. So if you've got a fly problem, this is your plant. These can take sun or shade. They come in such great flowers. I love this fuchsia color. So, and by the way, whenever I do a pot, I never do 2 of something, 4 of something. It's always odd numbers. You know, I garden that way out in the garden too, because anytime you use even numbers, it gives the container or the garden a very uniform look, which is not as appealing. It doesn't look natural, you know. So I want more of a wild look in this. So I'm going to use, you know, different numbers of them. So I would probably, I'm going to put 3 in. I'm not going to do the back because that would be a lot of work for me, but well, I'll put that one in there. Okay, so I'm going to put 3 of those in there. Now, I still want more color. So these are still all fillers, but you see they're all different heights and angles and things. So all right, now I'm going to put in this. This is a Frizzle Sizzle blue pansy. And I'll show you one kind of close up here. This is a new series of pansies they're coming up with. Can you see how cool those flowers are? You know what I love about pansies? They're the toughest plant you could put in here. Have you noticed that they grow them to plant and fall in your winter containers? They freeze, they flatten on the top like a pancake. And as soon as it gets warm, whoop, up they come and bloom again. And they'll bloom all summer. You do want to deadhead a bit. So this is the it's the sizzle, the Frizzle Sizzle series of these guys. Okay, so we're almost done with this now. Now we need one more thing. We've got this pot. We want something weeping over the side of the pot. So that's our spiller, you know. So, oh, and I didn't tell you one thing really important. When you do these pots, go to your favorite nursery and say, I want the best potting soil you've got. They'll know their best stuff. Don't ever buy the cheap stuff. Buy the best soil you can get because it'll hold the right amount of moisture. Also, I forgot something else. Oh my gosh. And that is when I'm planting this pot, before I put any plants in, I've got a full soil, I put in fertilizer. This is organic fertilizer. It won't burn your plants. The little microorganisms in the soil have to eat this stuff. The plants don't even know it's in the soil. The little microorganisms eat it up. It slowly goes through them. There's no way it can ever burn your plants. If you use a synthetic fertilizer, those are made out of petroleum and then they add minerals to it. And it's got a lot of salts in it. And if you accidentally put too much in this pot, because this has directions how much to put in for how much soil. I had no idea how much soil's in there, so I'm guessing. And so if you make a bad guess with synthetic like Scott's or Lily Miller fertilizer, it'll actually cause an imbalance that will make the salts will suck the liquids right out of the roots of the plant and burn the tweedle out of your plants. You can't do that with organic. Notice the numbers on this if you can. I'll tell them. The 463. First number is nitrogen. That's what makes things grow like crazy. The second number is phosphorus. This is what makes flowers and fruit happen. So on a pot like this with lots of color in it, I want it to flower, flower, flower. I'm going to use a fertilizer. This happens to be a tomato food, but it doesn't matter. But you could buy rose food, whatever you want. You want that second number higher in a pot like this. If this were a lettuce pot and a veggie pot, and I was planting a whole bunch of lettuces and things, I don't want those to go to seed. So in that, I would use an all-purpose organic fertilizer. This is 555. If that second number is as high as the first number, it's going to promote, if they're the same, it's going to promote growth, not flowering. So don't get that mixed up, whatever you do. Okay, one last thing. We want something to weep over the side in this. This is Creeping Jenny. It has a golden look to it, and then it'll get yellow flowers. Will this look cool weeping over the side of this pot or what? You know, so I'm going to put a bunch of those around to weep over the side. Big warning here. A lot of these weepers, as we call them, that we put in here are spillers. That's what people call them. These spillers can be a menace. Creeping Jenny, Wandering Charlie, any plant with a name like that, watch out, because what happens is they come down, they hit the ground, and if they hit garden soil or your lawn, they just take over your lawn or the garden soil, and it can be really horrible getting them out. So if you plant this on a cement thing, don't worry about it. You can let this come down. It'll look kind of stupid when it hits the cement, starts to run, so just cut it off. But if you plant this next to your garden, keep it trimmed. Don't let it ever touch that garden soil, and you're going to be in big trouble. So there's my pot. I know it's not totally full right now or anything, but this will be spectacular. This is actually the work of a genius, if I do say so myself. One last thing I have to tell you, though, and that is that men and women do not see color the same. This is a generalization, of course, you know, but generally women can see color, men never even see. 10% of men are colorblind. 0.001% of women are colorblind. We have different receptors for colors. 40% of men are color dysfunctional. So we need Viagra for this, guys. So don't feel too bad if you put it together and people walk by your house or your apartment and go, oh, la, la. Just go ahead and ask a woman friend to give you a hand and everything will turn out all right. Okay. I'll do one more thing and then I'll see if we've got any questions, all right? Because this is something that I've noticed people really have a lot of problems with, staking their plants. So if you've ever grown delphinium, you know they can get 6 feet tall. They're spectacular with these spiked flowers that go up, you know, and they can have the most beautiful blue, or they even have red ones now. Those spread too fast. Watch out for those. But the blue ones are wonderful, and the hummingbirds love them. But there's a problem with delphiniums and some peonies, a lot of different plants, and that is that, so you put that delphinium up and they have a tendency to want to fall down. So you can go buy these. These are great. They're Y stakes. They come in a lot of different sizes. I got to tell you, the little one is the one I like the best because I find I use this all the time. You don't have to stick it so far in the ground and you just kind of have it hold up the plant. It does so well, you wouldn't believe it. This size is okay if you've got nice loose ground, you could shove it in pretty far because you don't really want to see these all over in your garden. The problem is you use this on a delphinium and the wind hits it, it's going to probably break the delphinium right where this is. So I have figured out the best way to stake so many plants. And I have a peony right here. So herbaceous peonies so often, just the flowers are so big, they just hang down. And it's a real pain in the kazootski when they do that. And did you know that peonies were the original wedding flower? Back in like 17 and 1800s, they knew about peonies already and grew them all over the place. And the thing about peonies is once this bud gets big and just starts getting color, you could cut that off, keep it in a nice cool room overnight. Next morning, bring it out into a warm room. Boink, the flower opens, you got great wedding flowers. So I love peonies, to say the least. And you know, it's funny because when I was a kid, I was an assistant gardener at a church. I got that job when I was 10 years old. I actually hassled the live at Tweedle out of the priest in charge of hiring. I didn't even go to this church. They had put up signs saying they're looking for an assistant gardener, but they weren't looking for a 10-year-old kid. The fifth time I went in and harassed that poor priest in charge of hiring, it's the first time I ever heard a priest swear. He's like, all right, you little blankety blank, you got the job. Don't ever come in this office again. And when I came into the caretaker's office and he found out I was his new assistant gardener, that's the first time I ever saw a grown man cry. So when I worked there, old Joe, the caretaker, told me that a peony flower will not open up unless an ant visits the bud. And I believed that for years. I even said it in a garden talk once. And an extension agent was there and he fell out of his chair. He said that was an old myth that had been disproved like in the 1700s. So anyway, I was a little behind the time. But whenever you bring in peonies for cut flowers, you're going to have ants all over the table because there's something sweet on these buds that they love. So I usually blast them off before I bring them into the house. So I want this peony not to fall over. I want my delphinium to stand up good. So this is what I use right here. You can buy these grids at a lot of nurseries and garden centers, and they come with these stakes that you basically stick. So there's three stakes, four, I can't remember. You stick them in there, and I usually squeeze them with a plier because they can come out too easily. And then you stick them in the ground. So if I'm doing delphiniums or a peony, I will stick the first stakes way down in the ground. So this is at a 1.5 feet high, especially if I'm doing delphiniums. Then I'll get ones with longer wires, and I'll put this one so that it's at 3 feet. Now the delphinium grows right through this. You got to do it before the delphinium gets too tall. You're never going to get this on. Delphinium or your peony grows right on through this. Get in there. And that'll just hold it up a lot higher. And even in a big windstorm, they almost always don't break and fall down, you know. So I guess if I had a tall enough delphinium, I might do one of these at 4 feet. You could do it. I have one other use for this, by the way. If the squirrels eat your tulips, so, you know, we plant tulips. I have watched the squirrels watching me in my garden. I can hear them laughing, thinking, oh boy, this is going to be fun. We're going to dig up all his tulips and eat them. So what I do is I stick 2 of these on the ground right over where I planted the tulips. So I've got one here and I've got another one so that the grids are kind of crossing each other so that there's no way the squirrel can dig. Then I just use something to stick them in the ground, put a stone on the side, whatever, so the squirrels can't move them. It frustrates the living tweedle out of those guys. So that's a second use I use for these because I'm not using them on the delphiniums in the winter. They're long gone, they're perennials. So I use these for my tulips. And just remember, get them out of there before your tulips come out because it doesn't look that good with these all over the ground, you know. In the winter, who cares? But when the beautiful tulips come up, you don't want the tulips growing through those. Okay, I want to see if we've got a question I can answer yet. Have we gotten any yet? I don't know. I won't dig around wondering about it. So what I'm going to do now is show you an incredibly cool. So I don't work for these guys, but I was at the Flower and Garden Show many years ago. And one of the vendors knew who I was. And I will be telling you that if that's writing the questions, I can't see those, they're too far away. But so the guy caught me because he knew who I was, and he said, "I'm going to show you the coolest tool you'll ever have." And you know, I'm so used to people doing that. You know, he said, "No, give this thing a try. It's called a cut and hold pruner. They come in a whole lot of different lengths, but this is the one I use the most. For instance, pruning roses, this is key. Also, deadheading plants when you don't want to step into your garden. So here's how it works. Now, there's two ways you can twist it. And I'm probably going to twist it the wrong way here, knowing me. So if you twist it one way and you make a cut, so if I twist it this way and make a cut, oh, all right, it held it. That's what it's supposed to do. But I thought I had that done. I think it's this way it's supposed to be. So anyway, let's say you want to deadhead your peony after the flower failed, after it fades away. Just get this in there, cut it, and now I can just drop that in whatever I want to put it in. This is such a great tool. You can't believe it. So if you got roses, you know that if you get pricked by a mildewed rose, you can get a fungus problem that gets into your bloodstream. And I have known people that spent a long time in the hospital from that. So anytime I prune roses, I wear special rose gloves that come way down. But even then, thorns go through there sometimes. So I use this thing and I just deadhead my roses just like that. So tell you where it is. So write this down. I'm going to get 100 emails tomorrow going back. What was the name of that thing? It's a cut and hold pruner. And what you can do on your computer is put in Wildflower Seed Company cut and hold pruner. And this is the short, Wildflower Seed Company cut and hold pruner. This is the short one. I have long ones that I use on all kinds of my plants way up high. And I just love it, the fact that it holds the thing you cut and lets you drop it in. Otherwise, what would be the object of using this on the rose? Everything would be just falling on the ground. I'd still have to pick it up and probably end up getting stuck by some of those prickers. Okay.
Ciscoe,
right.
We have some questions if you're ready for them.
I am ready for a question.
All right. Ms. Devereaux Coast asked how to handle the roots of root-bound potted plants / starts when transplanting.
That's a great question. And I'll go ahead and use one of these plants to show. So, this might not be root bound. And I always wear gloves whenever I'm working with plants. Today is no big deal. But there sometimes are funguses in the soil. A friend of mine got a fungus on her hands and had to give up gardening. So be careful. But anyway, I'm going to show you. So you have that new plant. And a lot of times, you know, nobody buys them in the nursery for a while. And the roots get harder and harder in there because they're so root bound. And what happens, and this is true with your house plants too. If you don't transplant a house plant, or this plant doesn't sell quick enough in the nursery, it gets so full of roots, it's so hard, it contracts from the side of the pot. So when you water the plant, no water is going into that really hard root ball. They're moving along the top and going down the side and out the drain hole. So if that's happening to your house plants, this is the time to transplant into a pot 1 inch bigger. But when I'm planting something like this pansy here, now this is not that root bound. This is actually perfect. You couldn't ask for better. But a lot of times they're just like a rock. What I do when I plant something like this is I just crack it. So I'll try and show it better. So I just crack it, and crack it. And that's all you need to do. Those roots are ready to move out. But if, let's say you're planting a big plant and that root ball's like a rock, I take my pruners and I just cut down the side. If the root ball's really terrible, just rip the roots off the bottom and it'll divide much better when you do this, and it'll break up. Now, it is possible to overdo this. So, you want to break them up nice, because otherwise the roots never go out. I actually had a case. I used to do a lot of consulting because I was a certified arborist. I went to this one person's house. They had like 20 arborvitae pyramidalis type trees to make a screen, to screen off their house from the road. And about 4 or 5 had died. They had planted those like 6 years before. I grabbed one, ripped it right out of the ground. They still looked like they were right in the pot. The roots had never gone out. So it's really important to do this. The only thing the worst thing ever happened to me was on my very first TV show. You'll be surprised to learn the host of my very first TV show was Jeff Probst from Survivor. It was called Northwest Home and Garden. And I'll never forget, I was the director at Seattle University at that time, and we were filming in one of the gardens. And they wanted me to show how to break up, roots that are, a really tight root ball. And so I got the plant and I started breaking them up. A big jet flew over, so we had to film it again. So I take the plant and I start breaking them up. I mess up my lines. I got to do it again. Some little kid yells in the background, I got to do it again. Finally, there's like 3 roots left on this root ball. And I go, don't overdo it though, whatever you do. So believe me, it's better to do it than not. I'd rather overdo it than not do it at all. Hey, while I got these, I want to show you one other tool. These are, I don't work for these guys either. These are Felco pruners. If you saw me on Evening Magazine the other day, I was doing quick draws with these. No gardener should ever even leave the house without their pruners on them. And buy yourself, these things cost about $100 now. And when I bought these, I've had these so long, I probably paid $30 or $29 for them. But now they're about $100 at the nursery. So these are Felco number 8s. They fit a small hand. I got a really small hand. They fit really well. They got nice contoured handles that are really nice. They're made out of Swiss steel. And so they stay sharp as can be. I'll show you how I sharpen them in 1 second. And buy a holster. Make sure you buy a holster. If you're a lefty, get number 9. If you're a righty, get number 8. They're my favorite. And now, why do I insist on a holster? Well, if you put these in your back pocket, you're going to rip your upholstery, wreck your pants, maybe wreck your hinder. I don't know, So a holster is so much better. And these just hook on your pocket. You don't even have to put them on a belt. So they're really nice. Because there's one thing wrong. These are Swiss steel, all replaceable parts. I have had these forever. And buy yourself a sharpener. The way you do it, you only sharpen the beveled side. So and they usually sell these sharpeners right by them at the nursery. So you take the coarser side first and just go along the bevel. I always give a little extra right to the first part. Go around the bevel, then do the fine side. Oh, that is so sharp. You can't believe it. It'll stay sharp for quite a while because this is great Swiss steel. There's one thing wrong with these pruners that I can't believe that they can't fix, but they never have. I've never wrote them to tell them to do it though. And that is that I always use scientific terms, So this little Dumaflachi that locks it. So after you've been using it, there's a little thing that you can lock it with. Well, they wear out. It's a lousy thing. And so if you lock it every time you're not using it, then pretty soon that wears out. And what do? We tighten the screw to tighten it up so that it doesn't lock every time we make a cut. And pretty soon you can't get that screw out anymore. It's so tight that at Seattle U, whenever this would happen to one of my employees, I go, bring it in. We're going to drill out that little screw and you'll never have a lock again. I never use the locks. I keep them in the holster. And so I never leave the house if I'm doing gardening without these with me, because they're like the 6-gun for the cowboy in the Old West. I sleep with these under my pillow, and I have gotten to be quite a good fast draw too. So. Okay, how about another question?
No problem. Coming up right now, Miss Nikki Nichols asks, is there a plant salvage group in Seattle so that when homes are about to be destroyed, the plants could be saved prior to the destruction?
What a great question, because houses are selling so fast. And I get a lot of emails from people going, it's the middle of summer, and they go, I didn't know we were going to sell our house, or I didn't know it was going to sell so fast. And now I want to dig out all these plants in the middle of summer. Can I get away with that? So unfortunately, as far as I know, there's no place that salvages plants for people. So unfortunately, you have to find a friend's house, something like that, and see if you could talk them in, especially you have a friend who likes to garden, but they have an area that's, maybe it's a cut flower area that they grow things, something like that. For instance, and I'll tell you, that's a good way to do it. If you could find a friend, you could just plant them in there till you're ready to pot them up at the best time to take them with you. That would be great. So if I were going to sell my house, I'd be looking at friends' houses, looking for a spot like that. And but my wife, Mary, you may or may not know that my wife, Mary, is a top-notch expert gardener. And that's the worst thing that could possibly happen, to marry, for two expert gardeners to marry each other. Oh la la. We walk out the door and I'll say, we should plant a grevillea right here. This is one of the best hummingbird plants you'll ever find. It's called Grevillea Canberra gem. Gets about 4 feet by 4 feet and blooms all summer long. And there are grevilleas that bloom all winter to keep our winter hummingbirds happy. So I'll say, hey, let's plant a Canberra gem grevillea here. She'll go, no, we're putting a Japanese maple here. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. When the neighbors see both our hands and feet in the air at the same time, they go, oh no, garden wars again. So we finally had to divide the garden into his and her plots. The first garden we had, we divided right down the middle. Whenever someone came over, which side you like the best? Now we each have our own garden plots, and we never ever go in the other person's side. And it's a lot cheaper to do that than go to marriage counseling. I can tell you that much. So my wife, Mary, she redid one of her areas. She put all her plants in our vegetable garden. I went out to do the veggie garden that spring, and I'm like, what the heck is this? So be careful. You'll get in trouble with your partner if you try and salvage those plants in the wrong place. Okay, I'll do a thing here first, and then I'll do the next question again. So people always say to me, what's the best mulch to use in my garden? And there are so many mulches. There's that composted cow manure, there's compost, there's bark. There's wood chips from the arborist, which is what this is right here. So I hope you can see it good. And so which is the best thing to use? If you're doing veggie gardening, I do compost. Because here's the thing, if you use a raw organic substance like bark or wood chips from the arborist, you know, these are left over after that man or woman cutting down the tree or pruning is throwing those branches through the grinder. If you put those on the ground, that's wonderful. It does no harm, doesn't change anything. It does a lot of good that I'll explain. But if you mix them into the soil, the little microorganisms that live in the soil, their job is to break any raw organic substance that gets into the ground down to humus, which is as far as you could break something down. So if you mix these wood chips into the soil when you plant a tree, so you're planting a new plant, you don't move the wood chips away, they get mixed in. There's not going to be any nutrition in there. They steal all your nutrition, the little microorganisms, in the process of breaking down the organic substance. So that's the worst thing that happened. Your tree isn't going to grow at all. You're going to have to fertilize like crazy to get it to grow. But with compost, in theory anyway, it's already broken down as far as it could go. So you can mix it in with the plants when you plant. It actually adds moisture holding capacity, helps the soil aggregate to improve drainage. So it's really good to mix compost into the soil. So I like to put it on my veggie garden because I'm always changing the plants, moving plants. You know, I have lettuce here, then I plant broccoli. Then later on in the summer, I might plant some plants that'll go through winter and produce in the spring. So yeah, I want compost on there. But what's the problem with compost? Every weed that falls on it grows, drives you crazy, you know, so you're weeding all the time. I'm willing to do that in my veggie garden because I don't want to mix it in and I don't have to move wood chips every time. So, okay. But in my perennial beds, like these beautiful ones out here at Culver, in these beds, I would use wood chips. And at home, I use wood chips. I hate bark. I think bark is the worst stuff there ever was. It's too uniform. It meshes down. And when it does, not only that, we keep adding to it to keep it looking pretty. It gets all this mycelium mushroom stuff in the middle. And it basically stops air and moisture from getting to the roots of the plant. You get great weed control. Do get that. But that's about all you get, in my opinion. And you pay a ton for it. When I started working at Seattle University, and that was in 1978, first day of spring, I got hired as a director for grounds care. And, you know, I saw that they were spending all this money for bark and it was killing their plants. So I said, we're getting rid of this. And I called all my arborist friends, since I was a certified arborist. I said, bring your wood chips. Bring these wood chips to Seattle University. And so now when you get these, they won't look like this. They'll have all sorts of green things because they grind up the leaves, the needles, anything. Don't worry about that. That's good stuff. Now, why do I love wood chips? First of all, they give you weed control like crazy, but they're not at all uniform. It never packs down. So if you put it like 2 inches deep over the soil, for most weed seeds, not for all of them, but for almost every weed seed, for them to germinate, they have to be hit by direct sunlight. That's why we like to grow our lawns a little taller and thick. Thick, tall lawn doesn't let the sun reach the earth, and the dandelion seeds sitting there don't germinate. So it's the same thing. You cover it with these wood chips. The sun's going to hit the wood chips, not the soil earth, and not the seed down there sitting on the ground. So you get very few weeds if you use wood chips. It works so good. There's another thing. It's kind of something special, and that is that there's something called mycorrhizae. These are teensy little nodules that hook to the roots of your tree or shrub or perennial, And what they do is they send out feeders to find food and water for your plant, and they're rewarded for their work by byproducts that come out of the roots of the plant. And when I studied to become a certified arborist, I studied with a really famous scientist down in Oregon. And I went for a 2-week course with this guy. And we would go out and dig up tree roots and perennial roots and all kinds of roots. And what we found is where wood chips were used as a mulch, it was like there were so many more of these little mycorrhizae than where compost was used, bark was used, anything else. So that's a big advantage. Finally, there's one other great advantage. So if you use wood chips, you got to put them down every year. They break down really fast. So that I always put them down in fall because then they're in perfect position in spring when all the weeds start to grow. That keeps the weeds from growing. But what these wood chips do is they break down into the best topsoil. All those green things that were in there, the needles, the ground up needles and leaves, they all become the best topsoil you've ever seen. We used them for the whole 24 years I directed grounds care at Seattle U. I've been using them at my home for, I think, around 30 years. You should see my topsoil. It is so good, you can't believe it. And you can get them free. So what you do is you go on the web and you put in get arborist wood chips, and you'll get their site, getchipdrop.com, I think it is. And you could just sign up to get these wood chips. So you get them for free. Here is the one warning. There's always a warning with everything I say. And that is that. Now, years and years ago, when I got my very first radio show, I was a master gardener. I had a lot of master gardener buddies. I'm still a master gardener, still have a lot of master gardener buddies too. And the extension agent had a radio show, George Pinu, and he decided to retire. He picked me to take his Cairo radio show. And all my master gardener friends are going, why did he pick you? What's so special about you, you know? I'm like, I don't know why he picked me, you know? So I had this radio show. I knew everybody in the world was watching to see if I was going to mess up. So I was a nervous wreck, you know. Now I'm used to making mistakes. It doesn't bother me anymore. So on the 8th show, the way it works, you wear earphones, and so you can hear the person who calls in. You see what their name is on the computer and which telephone line they hit. You hit that and you talk into a mic. So on my 8th show, first caller, I see it's Mary from Renton. So I hit the button. I go, Mary from Renton, how are you? She goes, I want to wring your neck. I wanted to go, oh, did we lose her? You know, but I didn't. I said, what did I do wrong? You know, and she goes, you told me to get those wood chips. I said, well, you don't like the wood chips? Is there something about them that didn't work out? She goes, no, I did just what you told me to do. So my husband was in taking a nap. He had a big business meeting in 2 hours he had to be to. And so she said, I had called you on your second show and you told me about getting wood chips. She said, so I remember what you said. I was going to the store and here is a guy putting the branches through the grinder. So she pulls over, she goes over and she even looked at the wood chips. Sometimes when their grinders are really dull, you get this yucky, stringy wood chips. They work all right, but they don't work very good. So I warned her about that. She said, there was the guy down the street putting the thing through. She looked at it, really liked it. She went over and said, can I have those wood chips? The guy goes, oh yeah, because they got to get rid of them, you know? So he said, yeah, what's your address? She gave him her address and everything. She goes, imagine my surprise when I came back 4 hours later, there was her husband standing there scratching his head. on the back side, a 15-yard pile of wood chips right in the middle of her driveway, and his car was on the back side. Oh, la, la. And he was not a happy camper. So I did give her good advice, though. I told her to buy some really good wine, invite all the next door neighbors over, and give a little talk about the qualities of wood chips. So they took some of them. Oh, la, la. Okay, I'm ready for another question.
All righty, let's see. Miss Lynn says, I'm overwhelmed with moss in my gardens. Any ideas?
Yeah, moss in the garden is a real pain. There's no doubt about it. We live in the moss capital of the world. It's actually been scientifically proven that if you stand in one spot too long in the Pacific Northwest, you can get moss growing on your nose. So it can be a real problem. But here's the problem is if you try to kill that moss, so iron sulfate, I think it is what's in moss killer that you put on your lawn. So if you put that in your bed where you've got a whole bunch of really beautiful perennials or anything else, I wouldn't go near your vegetables with that stuff. Then what it'll do is it'll probably kill any plant you have. You could spray it on a tree. If it's in the middle of winter and it's a deciduous tree that drops its leaves, you could spray it on that moss and lichen that grows on there. All it does is turn the moss and lichen pitch black, makes it so ugly you can't believe it, and it comes right back. So it's not worth doing. Same thing. There's nothing you can really spray in the garden. You can put iron sulfate on your lawn, but if you do, be careful, because my friend did that. Her cat walked on the iron sulfate, licked its paw, and it killed her cat. They do make soaps now, hose-end soaps that you could spray on the lawn. I would go with that over the regular moss killer, moss control stuff they sell. But in the garden, there's no two ways about it. The only way you can really get rid of it is to scrape it out. So they make special holes. They make a hole called a stirrup hole. The other one is a scuffle hole. And they just scrape right along the surface and just pull all that moss right off, rake it up, get rid of it. But if you use wood chips, you're going to get a lot less of that moss growing back. They don't like growing on the wood chips. They want to be on the soil. So if you could get these wood chips kind of thick, that's going to help a lot. So just remember, don't work those wood chips into the soil, though. That can be a problem. If you have to scrape moss, you got to move them way out of the way, scrape up the moss, get it out of there, and put the wood chips back. Oh, okay. Let's see. All right, I'm going to show something here. Okay, so rhododendron. I get a lot of questions about rhododendron. It's too bad I couldn't have waited a little longer to show you the spectacular flower on this guy. It's huge. But so there's a couple questions I get about rhodies all the time. One is, what about deadhead in a rhodie? So as soon as the flowers fade, most people say you should go out and just snap the old flower off and get those off. And your rhodie will look a lot nicer if you do that. You don't have to do it though, because if you leave those on, the amount of growth you'll get out of your rhodie, you'll end up with about the exact same amount of flowers you got the year before. So it's not true that if you don't do it, you get less flowers. However, if you do snap off all the spent flowers on your rhododendron, you will actually get a lot more flowers the next year. So it might be worth doing. Great, thank you. And all right, I think we're only going to go a little while longer. So I'll take a couple more questions and I'll give away my book. But I got to finish telling you about rhododendrons quick. So the other thing that happens with rhododendrons, and I fertilize them with organic rhododendron food right this time of year. because after the flower opens and then it fades, that's when the new growth starts. So you want a lot of nutrition for that. So I get a lot of calls from people or emails, and they go, I bought this spectacular rhododendron because I saw it in the pot at the nursery, had this beautiful flower. I thought, I'm going to put that in front of the picture window. We'll look out and see this spectacular rhododendron blooming away out there. Well, a rhodie like this one's about 15 feet tall. I have seen rhododendrons over 50 feet tall in some of the old English gardens. So like Sissinghurst things, because the earliest, and cute, because the explorers would bring these rhodies back, and a lot of rhodies are trees. So pretty soon, without really realizing what's happening, we're sitting in our living room looking out the window at the thickest plant you've ever seen. We don't see any flowers, we don't see anything. This happened at Seattle University. So the priests, it's a Jesuit college. The priests had their own building on the campus with their own garden. And my crew and I didn't go in and work in their garden unless they asked for our help. And they would ask for my help off and on. So I get a call from Father B, one of the priest who hired me at Seattle. I love the guy. And he was having an argument with Father Woods, because those two guys kind of ran the garden behind the building. So I go over there. He says, come on over here. You got to solve this problem we got. And I'm like, oh God, this is going to be tough. I go over there, and Father B says, well, look out our dining room window. We all eating in here, and we have that beautiful garden, and this big rhododendron is blocking the view. I go, yeah, and he goes, well, every 5 years or 6 years, Father Wood goes out and cuts it down to 2.5 feet tall, so it's below the window, and then we don't see it for about 5 years. It grows back, blocks the window, and blooms again. So I went, there's a way better way. What you could do is and I said, I'll do it. I'll go out and cut any branches that are all the low branches. I'll cut off the leaves and the low branches. And what I'll do is I'll leave a framework of really beautiful trunks, because a lot of these have exfoliating red bark. It can be really beautiful. A madrona is the queen of the rhododendron family. So I said, I'll frame this view through these beautiful trunks, and you'll be able to look out through the trunks at the garden, and you'll see the big flowers up above, or at least when you're out in the garden, you'll see them in the canopy up above. Everybody went, wow, that's a great idea. So they all want me to do it. Firewood goes, I've been here for 30 years. Every 5 or 6 years, I go out and cut that to 2.5 feet. It's my job, and I'm doing it. And when Father Wood said he's doing something, nobody fought with that guy. He's too tough. So I went back to my office. All the priests were really disappointed. The next Monday, that was a Friday. Next Monday, Father B calls me. He goes, you're not going to believe this. I go, what? He goes, they're shipping Father Woods to Rome for 5 years. I go, you're kidding. He goes, no. He's leaving a little later this week. He's never going to have time to cut that rhodie. So after he leaves, I'll give you a call. Get over here and do that pruning. So Father Wood got shipped out to Rome. I went over and I pruned it up. It took me a couple of years to get it to where it really looked cool. You look through that framework, and it was all up above, and I planted trilliums and hostas and things down below. It was spectacular. Well, 5 years went by. Unbeknown to me, Father Woods got sent back from Rome to Seattle University. First job he did, the weekend he got back, he went and cut that rhodie down to 2.5 feet. I don't know if priests could go to hell, but if they can, that's where he is right now. Okay, how about if we do one more question, and then I'll give away my books. That sound good?
Sounds pretty good. I think let's do one more question here from Miss Peggy. Should be like one is kind of a easy one. It's a quick one, so I'm gonna double it up really quick. What was the name of that plant that attracts hummingbirds? She didn't quite catch it.
Oh, this is the coolest plant you'll ever see. It is called Grevillea, Grevillea. It only grows in Australia, but it's hardy here. So Grevillea, this one is Canberry gem. So Canberry is a town in southern Australia that I've visited many times. I've seen these growing all over Australia. And there's other grevilleas that do well here. My wife has one. The name is Rosemary folius. So it's like Romanus folia. And so it's like foliage like a rosemary, and it's really spectacular. And then the queen of the whole bunch is Grevillea victoria. It has big leaves. They're sort of silver underneath. It's a beautiful plant. It gets 6 feet tall. This gets 4 by 4. And it blooms all winter long to feed the Anna hummingbirds that stay in our area. So that's a good one. But these have to have really well-drained soil and full sun. That's the trick. Okay. Well, should I give away my books?
Yes.
Okay, now here's the trick. We have to know. So when I'm going to ask a first lead-in question. So when I ask that question, the first person that raised your hand or hits the chat and said, me, whatever, then you get your chance to answer my tough Ciscoe Garden Stumper question that you have to get right to win my book. And these questions are tough. Even though I've never stumped in one, I figured out why. It's because I give 2 tries on true and false. Okay, so are we ready to give away the book yet?
Yes.
Okay. All right, here's the question. Who has ever had a wiener dog? Anybody out there had a wiener dog? Hit the raise your hand. Nothing yet? Okay, who likes wiener dogs?
Raise my hand.
Oh, it looks like it was Miss Mercedes Sharita.
Oh my
All
God.
right.
Oh my gosh.
So
Hello.
this is Mercedes.
Yes.
And can we have her on the screen, or is that too difficult?
She's
No.
on the screen.
Okay,
can
well,
do
I've
that.
got you. I can hear you. So I'm going to ask you your question, all right? So here's your question to win Ask Ciscoe,
Oh no.
my top-selling garden book in the United States. But I wrote this a pretty long time ago, but it's got a lot of humor. It'll answer every question you have, except for about deer, because I wrote about that in my newer book. Okay?
Oh gee.
All right, here's your question. If you were a hummingbird, would you rather be a male or a female? And you only get 2 tries on this.
Ooh. Well, I'm a lady and I think I'd like to be a female.
One more guess.
It's a male.
Yeah, good comeback. Yeah, you know why you'd rather be a male? Because male hummingbirds are the laziest bums on earth. The female does all the work. She builds the nest. It's about the size of a half walnut. She even weaves a spider web into it to hold it together. She lays 2 eggs in there. She's the one that has to sit on the eggs and keep them warm. She has to protect them from predators while somehow she feeds herself. Then when the babies hatch, guess who feeds the babies? Guess who protects them against the predators? Guess who teaches them how to fly? Guess who kicks them out of the nest? During all this time, the male has 2 jobs: protecting his territory and mating, my kind of job. So Mercedes, you won this. So Al, just make sure I get her address or
No
or
problem.
email
We'll make
so
it.
that I
We'll
can
find a way to get her the book.
yeah, because I want to sign it and get this to you, okay?
Thank
All
you.
right.
So,
If you live here, I can sign it now. Just leave it with Al. So I'll
We'll
type
get it to
Al.
you. Yes.
All right.
So we've
Okay,
reached
good.
the end
That's
of our time.
perfect.
Congratulations, Ms. Mercedes.
Nice job, Mercedes. Okay, so for the next book, this is Oh La La, short stories about gardening. And it's a bestseller on Amazon, I'm happy to say. And unfortunately, it came out right when the pandemic hit. 30 of my book signings had to cancel, but that's life in the big city. But people tell me that they get a lot of fun out of this. I hope so. All right. So for this one, who thinks squirrels are edible?
Looked like Miss Dory to me.
Who is it?
Dory.
Dory. Okay, Dory. If you can do your audio, we can talk.
Yeah, Dory, looks like you're still muted. There you go. You're live.
All right, Dory, welcome and good job.
I've
Yeah,
eaten them. I
so
have
you-
eaten them.
So you've eaten them?
Mm.
Yeah, because I ate squirrel when I was a kid, because my brothers were big hunters back in Wisconsin. By the way, the squirrels we have here are the same ones that they had in Wisconsin. Somebody brought squirrels to a World's Fair in like 1901 from Central Park in New York. And just like the thugs in New York, they took over our turf and kicked our squirrels out. So now all we have is eastern gray squirrels for most part in Washington. So, and when I was a kid, my brothers would hunt and I hated it when they squirrel hunted. So my mom had a rule, if my brother shot it, we had to eat it. And I'll tell you this much, squirrel does not taste like chicken. Okay. All right, Doris, here's your question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here's your question. Okay, so hummingbirds can flap their wings 80 times per second when they stand still in the air. But when they feel a certain emotion, they can flap their wings 160 times per second. Here's your question. Do they flap their wings 160 times per second when they're mad, when they're scared, or when they're in love?
When they're in love.
In love?
Mm.
You got it. Good job. Very good job. So just because you folks watching are such wildcats, I'm going to perform the hummingbird mating dance as an ending for this talk. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll make sure you get this, Doris. So we'll make sure you get this book signed special for you. So here's what you'll see. And I keep an eye out when you're out in the patio here. You'll probably see this. So I see the Anna hummingbirds do this the most. They're the bigger green one with the red head and the red gorget. So I'll see two female hummingbirds at my house. It's Heloise hummingbird and Helen hummingbird standing there about 5 feet apart, flapping their wings 80 times per second, standing still in the air. All of a sudden, Howie comes shooting up between them, gives them both the eye, then from a dead stop, beats his little wings 160 times per second, shoots in the air like an arrow so fast you can't believe it, hits speeds over 60 miles an hour, goes about 120 feet into the air, slaps his wings into his side, goes into a death-defying dive, just this is about to splat like a ripe tomato on the patio. He goes, but misses the cement by 1/8 inch. What us guys have to do for love. Oh la la. Well,
Thank you for that, Ciscoe. That's quite a way to end the presentation, I'll have to say. I'll leave
oh,
the
thank you so much. Well, I really enjoyed coming here to Culver. I think your garden is gorgeous here. So thank you so much, everyone, for having me and for tuning in to the talk today. And remember, any chance you get, garden, even if it's just in a house plant, that connection to the earth will always keep you happy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ciscoe. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm sure we all learned a little something new, and I definitely didn't know about the death-defying bomb, so I'll keep an eye out for that. We will be emailing everyone an evaluation form. We'd love to hear your feedback on this. Ms. Mercedes and Dory will send you those books. If you have any questions, you can email me, al.valle, V-A-L-L-E, @eraliving.com. Again, thank you so much. This concludes our presentation for today. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we look forward to visiting with you in future Zooms, but more importantly, and with a little more anticipation in person soon again. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.
I